Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something a little different and way more intense. Imagine this. You open your eyes to a chorus of shouting men, clinking chains, and the overwhelming reek of unwashed bodies under a scorching Mediterranean sun. You're lying on rough straw, your wrists are shackled, and your tunic, if you can call this scratchy rag that, is soaked in sweat. Welcome to a Roman slave market, and no, this isn't a field trip for Latin class. You're the merchandise. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your arms ache from the weight of iron manacles, and your lips are dry as parchment. All around you, others are moaning, muttering in languages you don't understand. One man nearby coughs violently and spits blood onto the dusty ground. A small boy, barefoot and sunburned, clutches his knees and rocks back and forth. The noise is relentless. Traders bark orders. Buyers laugh and haggle. Somewhere a camel bellows indignantly. Your brain races. How did you get here? 1 minute you were... Well, you can't quite remember. It's foggy, like a dream slipping away. Maybe that's for the best. The pens are more like cages. Wooden railings, tied posts, and thick ropes that bite into your ankles when you move. There's a crude water trough, but it's green with scum. You try a sip anyway. It's like drinking old soup made from barnyard feet. A trader stomps in your direction, sandals slapping, robe flapping. His beard is wiry and dusted with sand, and his breath could peel paint off a wall. He jabs a finger toward you, yells something at a scribbling man nearby, and then grabs your jaw. Teeth, he grunts in Latin. He yanks your mouth open and squints inside. You want to bite his thumb, but you don't fancy losing yours in return. He prods your biceps next, nods, then slaps your shoulder as if you're a stubborn mule. That's when you realise you're being appraised like livestock. The man beside you mutters, "Illyrian strong." You blink at him. He nods at you again. "Good shoulders? They'll pay well." "Cool. Great to know your shoulder-to-gold ratio is promising." Above you, the sun beats down like a punishment from Jupiter himself. The dust makes your eyes sting. Somewhere, a trumpet blares, and the crowd shifts toward the central auction stage. A slightly raised platform with peeling red paint and a big, dramatic curtain that somehow manages to look both theatrical and depressing. One by one, people are hauled up there. A woman screams and kicks, so a guard whacks her with a stick. She stops. Her price drops. A family is separated. 2 girls, dragged one way, their parents the other. You turn away, you have to, but the sound of the little ones crying follows you like smoke. Historians still argue whether Roman slave markets were always this brutal, or whether sellers occasionally softened the experience to attract more refined clientele. Either way, this one's definitely from the brutal aisle. Suddenly, it's your turn. The guard points and your stomach plunges. They drag you up the stairs, your feet stumbling over the steps, your wrists yanked hard when you hesitate. And then, boom, you're centre stage, hundreds of eyes, nobles, merchants, matrons fanning themselves lazily. One guy munches on olives, while squinting at you like he's buying socks. Someone yells a number, another shouts higher. The bidding begins. A nearby whisper catches your ear. They say Caesar once disguised himself and bought a man here for a joke. Fringe story. But in this place, who knows? The auctioneer rattles off descriptions, your height, your age, they guess, your good legs. You want to shout something, anything, but your throat locks up. And then a final bid. A rich voice, female. She steps into view. Robes of deep purple, a parasol held by a sullen slave girl, and jewellery that glitters like it's trying too hard. She doesn't smile. She just nods, Sold. You're pulled down from the stage, thrown onto a cart with two others. You catch a glimpse of her carriage. Lions carved into the wood, and a crest shaped like a griffin, clutching a scroll. Fancy. As the cart jolts forward through the market gates, you see the city, sprawling before you. Rome. Huge, loud, alive, and completely alien. The smells hit you first. Charcoal, garlic, fish, sweat, incense, sewage. A sensory cocktail with zero chill. Vendors yell over each other, kids dart between legs, and someone's shouting about fresh eels. The cart turns down a tighter street, lined with multi-storey apartments called insulae. Laundry flaps from windows. Someone's throwing out chamber pot contents. Watch your head. You pass a temple, columns gleaming white, statues glaring down like they know what you did. A priest chants something rhythmic. You can't understand it, but it sounds serious. Finally, the cart slows before a high wall. A metal gate creaks open. You're inside the domus now, the private home of your new mistress. Paved courtyard, decorative pool, columns for days, and standing there, arms folded, is a tall, older man in a tunic dyed a crisp blue. He eyes you up and down. "They bought you?" he says flatly, then sighs. "Welcome to House Cornelia," he mutters. "Try not to die on your first week." No promises. You're barely through the threshold of House Cornelia before someone flings a tunic at your face and barks, "Change, now!" The cloth smells faintly of smoke and lavender, an upgrade from your previous outfit, which you're starting to suspect was last worn by a corpse. You fumble into the tunic under the unblinking gaze of a servant who looks like he's been chewing lemon peels for 30 years straight. The man with the blue tunic, clearly head of the household staff, grunts. "Name's Drusus. I'm the Villicus here. That means I keep things running and you don't make my job harder." Noted. He jerks his chin toward a door. "Come." You follow, limping slightly. Those iron ankle manacles weren't exactly orthopedic, and step into the slave quarters. It's a single windowless room, lined with sleeping mats stuffed with straw. The smell? Let's call it eau de damp sandal. There's a row of clay pots in the corner that you pray aren't what you think they are. Spoiler? They are. Two other slaves glance up. One is a skinny teenager with eyes too big for his face and a nervous smile. The other's a broad-shouldered woman peeling garlic cloves with a speed that should be illegal. The woman sizes you up. "New blood," she says. "Hope you like waking up before dawn." Before you can respond, Drusus returns with a slate board and stylus. "You're Nova now," he says. "No one cares what your name was, not anymore." Cool. Identity crisis added to the list. Drusus walks you through the basics of your role. You're a familia urbana, a household slave. That's better than working in the mines, which are pretty much death with a pickaxe. Still, you're on the bottom rung. Your job is to assist wherever needed until someone figures out what to do with you. Kind of like an unpaid intern, except with more olives and occasional lashings. The domus is a maze, open-air courtyard, a peristyle garden, rooms with painted frescoes of gods doing dramatic poses, and floors so shiny you can see your own panic in them. You're assigned to clean the atrium first thing each morning. Polish the tiles, Drusus says, but don't touch the lararium. That's the household shrine, mini statues of ancestors, tiny offerings of food, and an unsettling number of chicken bones. Fact check. Most Roman households had a lararium to honour household spirits, or leas. Some even offered them wine. One famously drunk family spirit was said to have started a kitchen fire by knocking over a lamp. Historians doubt it, but it's definitely a vibe. You're given a bucket, a rag, and exactly 0 instructions. So you scrub, and scrub, and scrub. Halfway through, you knock over a small bronze incense holder. It clatters loudly enough to wake the emperor. A maid gasps. "You touched the lararium!" You freeze. Drusus appears like a summoned demon. His eyes narrow. "One more mistake, Nova. he growls. And I'll see if the kitchen needs a rat catcher. You're starting to think Drusus doesn't get invited to many dinner parties. Later that day, you're hauled off for inspection again, this time by the mistress herself. Lady Cornelia reclines on a cushioned couch, a goblet of watered wine in one hand and a disapproving sneer on her face. She waves a perfumed cloth in your general direction, as though your existence is an unpleasant odour. Strong arms, ugly face, she declares. Good. Less chance of seducing the steward. She means Drusus, please. She orders you to stand, turn, flex and recite a phrase in Latin. You panic. Latin? All you've got is Veni Vidi Vici, and you're not even sure that fits. You mumble something about Caesar and hope for the best. She laughs. That will do. He can serve wine at feasts, far enough from the good plates. You're dismissed. Your heart pounds in your ears. The teenager with the big eyes catches you outside the triclinium and whispers, "She likes dogs more than people. You're doing fine." That night, you barely sleep. You lie on the straw mat, trying to figure out how to escape, or at least how to survive. You overhear two older slaves talking in the dark. They say Marcus got sold off, one mutters, caught napping near the caldarium. Napping? The other snorts. Lucky it wasn't stealing. You know what happened to the last one. You pretend to be asleep, but your ears stay wide open. Historians still argue whether Roman slave punishments were doled out consistently or if favoritism and bribes played a bigger role. Based on what you've seen so far, it's very much a who-you-know situation. The next morning you're woken with a bucket of water to the face. It's 4 a.m. Drusus shouts, "Move!" You're off to the market, trailing behind another slave who's somehow both half asleep and entirely competent. The city outside is quieter now, cloaked in early morning haze. A few stalls are already opening. Bread sellers fan their ovens. Fishmongers curse at cats. You carry a heavy basket and are told not to make eye contact or noise unless death is imminent. A cart nearly flattens you when you stumble on a loose cobblestone. The driver swears in Greek. You swear back in English. That gets a slap and a warning. Back at the domus, you unload ingredients for the day's meals. You peel vegetables, clean meat, and avoid the cook, who has a cleaver and a temper. At one point you sneeze, and the old woman with the garlic shrieks, "If you're sick, sleep in the atrium tonight." You learn fast, head down, mouth shut, eyes open. You learn how to fold a toga without creasing the hem, how to extinguish a torch without smoke staining the ceiling, how to tell when Lady Cornelia wants honeyed wine versus plain. You also learn that every door in this house creaks, and every floor tile has a different sound. You're a ghost now, a silent shadow in someone else's life. But there's something else too, a feeling buried deep beneath the fear and exhaustion that you're still you, whoever you were before this, and that maybe, just maybe, you're not going to let this world swallow you whole. You've never felt quite so out of place. Every time you open your mouth, it's like dropping a stone into a pond where everyone's already playing a different game with different rules, and in different languages. At this point, you're fairly certain you've been insulted in 4 dialects and complimented in a 5th, but you can't be sure, because you only understood about 5 words total. You spend your first full week in the domus trying to figure out how anyone communicates around here. Most slaves seem to understand Latin, at least the basics, but the sounds vary wildly. Some speak it with a thick Greek twist. Others clip words like they're short on syllables. Then there's the Egyptian boy, who mimes more than he talks, and an elderly man from Gaul who growls in something that might actually be bear. "Don't speak," someone asks, not unkindly, after you mess up a wine order for the 3rd time. It's the skinny teenager again. He gestures to his mouth, then yours. You shrug. "I speak," you reply. "You just don't understand me." He tilts his head. "Ah, like most Romans then." His name, you learn, is Tiro. He's sharp-eyed, fast-fingered, and not above stealing leftover figs when no one's watching. He starts pointing at objects, and saying their Latin names: aqua, panis, fenestra, ferula water, bread, window, whip. Okay, not the most reassuring vocabulary set, but it's a start. Your lessons are sudden, unplanned, and constant. You learn the hard way that dexter means right, not go that way. You're told to fetch a lampas and accidentally return with a basket of lemons. It earns you a cuff on the ear and a lesson in context. One night, during clean-up, you hear a lullaby, software hummed in a lilting, unfamiliar rhythm. You follow the sound and find an older woman sitting by the fire pit, cradling a bowl of dates. Phrygian song, she murmurs without looking up. From the east, you sit cautiously near her. She offers a single date, then continues humming. I used to sing it to my daughter, she says, then pauses. Before? You don't ask before what. Over time, you notice patterns. Some slaves form cliques based on origin: Greeks, Syrians, Thracians. Others bond by role: kitchen, garden, baths. You're somewhere in between, floating, observing, trying to learn without being noticed. But it's not just language, it's behaviour. In the kitchen, silence is preferred. Unless you're asked something, in which case you'd better answer quickly. In the garden, the old gardener whispers to plants more than people. In the triclinium, where nobles dine on their sides like sleepy crocodiles, body language is everything. If a guest twitches a pinky, someone better bring the honeyed almonds. If they raise both eyebrows, it might mean I need more wine, or this slave looks suspicious, or I stepped on a fig. Good luck guessing. There's one curly-haired man who never speaks. His face is blank, unreadable, his back marked with old scars. But when he walks past you in the corridor one day, he taps his chest twice, then points to a guard who's dozing near the storage room. A warning? A plan? You don't know yet. But the message is clear. Not all communication here requires words. Historians still debate whether slave communities in Rome developed true shared languages or a kind of cobbled-together slave Latin, a blend of commands, gestures, and sounds understood only among themselves. What you're experiencing feels exactly like that. Survival speech. You get more daring. One afternoon, while polishing a statue of Jupiter, who frankly looks a bit smug, you whisper to Tiro, "Why don't they teach us Latin properly?" He snorts. "Because if you understand everything, you might start thinking." He says it like a joke, but his smile doesn't reach his eyes. That evening, a group of slaves gathers near the kitchen hearth. A short, wiry man named Aulus begins telling a story. His voice low, words slow and rhythmic. You gather it's about a voyage across the Aegean, a merchant ship caught in a storm, and a sailor who outwitted Poseidon with a barrel of goat cheese. Everyone laughs at the ending, even you, and you barely caught half the plot. Still, there's warmth in the laughter. Shared air, shared life. Later, Tiro explains the phrase caput aqua means the head of the water, the first to drink from the jug. In the slave quarters, it's also slang for the unofficial leader, the one others respect. "Who's the caput aquae here while?" you ask. Tiro glances around, then shrugs. Maybe no one. Maybe we all wait our turn. There's something beautiful in that, you think. Even here, in this broken life, people are trying to build something, an understanding, a rhythm, maybe even a kind of family. You notice that, despite the cruelty of their circumstances, some of the older slaves have carved out strange, quiet domains of power. The cook hoards spices like gold. The man who tends the lamp oil is the only one who knows where the good wicks are kept. The bath attendant speaks softly, but even Drusus lowers his voice around her. Every night, as you lie on your scratchy mat, you replay new words in your head. Aqua, vinum, oculus. Don't step on that. Turn left. Hurry. And every morning you understand a little more. You stop flinching when someone calls your name. You start answering questions before they finish asking. You start listening, not just hearing. And slowly, without quite meaning to, you start becoming part of something. The morning of your sale had been a blur of heat and shouting, but the moment your feet touch the marble floor of the atrium, your new life begins with awkward silence. A row of house servants lines the wall, eyes cast downward. No one welcomes you, but they don't exactly hiss either, which you take as a solid start. Lady Cornelia enters like a gust of expensive perfume. Her robe swishes as she walks, her sandals clicking with practiced authority. She's flanked by 2 slaves, one carrying a silver fan, the other holding a tray of figs as if they're the crown jewels. She doesn't look at you directly. "Is this the one?" she asks. You glance around, half expecting someone else to raise a hand. Nope, you're it. She finally tilts her head your way. Ugly. That's fine. The prettier ones tend to have delusions. Then she's gone, trailing lavender and judgment. You're led through the house, deeper into the domus proper. This place is enormous. A high-walled compound with gardens, an impluvium. That's a fancy rainwater pool, because even Roman roofs need flair. Mosaic floors, and a kitchen that smells perpetually of garlic and roasted goat. You pass walls painted with frescoes, Apollo playing a lyre, Venus lounging dramatically, a surprisingly buff Mercury showing off a six-pack that seems historically suspicious. Drusus appears at your elbow again. "Now that you belong to House Cornelia," he says with a sigh, "you'll follow her rules." You want to ask what happens if you don't. Then you remember the slave market and decide not to get philosophical. You're assigned to general household duties, ministeria domestica, which is Latin for you do whatever no one else wants to do. First job? Cleaning up after the household's pet monkey. You assume this is a joke. It is not. The monkey, named Pulcher, ironically, that means beautiful, is a spiteful creature with the emotional range of a toddler and the bladder control of a drunken goat. He launches dates at your face. He screams when you touch his cushion. He bites your finger and then flings your rag into the impluvium. You tell yourself this is temporary. Everyone starts somewhere, right? Pulcher climbs onto your shoulder and promptly pees down your back. Welcome to Roman domestic service. You try to learn quickly. Drusus gives gruff instructions, usually mid-task. Sweep like you mean it. That sponge costs more than you do. No, don't use olive oil on the marble. Apparently, there are different types of oil for skin, food and floors. You use the wrong one, and now the hallway smells like salad. Fact of the day, Romans often used olive oil not just for cooking but also as soap. They'd slather themselves in oil, then scrape it off with a curved tool called a strigil, which sounds soothing until you realise they used it to remove sweat and dirt. Sometimes other people's sweat and dirt. Communal hygiene. You're not the only new face here. A Germanic boy named Rurik joins the staff 2 days after you. He barely speaks but has the arms of a blacksmith and eyes like winter storm clouds. The cook immediately drafts him into meat carving duty. You nod at him once. He nods back. That's your friendship for now. Meanwhile, Tiro teaches you tricks which amphora in the cellar leaks. Never stand to the left of the wine rack. How to sneak leftover honey bread. Only from the middle tray, she never counts those. And which corners of the courtyard have the best shade for hiding when you accidentally lose your dusting rag. But you're constantly reminded of the invisible walls that define your world now. Slaves don't speak at meals. Slaves walk to the left side of the hallway, not the centre. Slaves don't touch the family's linens, unless they want to spend a week laundering them by hand in the Tiber. Historians still argue whether Roman house slaves were treated more kindly than their counterparts in agriculture or industry. Drusus says one day, surprising you with an unsolicited history nugget. But kindness, he adds, depends on the mood of the person holding the whip. Your tasks vary by the hour. One moment, you're polishing silver amphorae that weigh more than you do. The next, you're helping prepare bath water with heated stones and dried herbs. The master likes his water smelling like victory, whatever that means. There's an older slave named Marina who's in charge of textiles. She teaches you how to fold togas like a pro and gives you a whack with a wooden spoon when you do it wrong. She also hums songs in Greek and occasionally tells stories about her youth in Delphi. Some true, some probably not. One involved a priest, a snake, and 3 days locked in a storage shed. You didn't ask questions. One afternoon, Lady Cornelia hosts a cena, a formal dinner with several guests, wealthy senators, their powdered wives, and one man with a beard so perfectly curled it might be classified as architecture. You're assigned as a cupbearer. High stakes. One wrong paw, one misplaced foot, and you'll be removed faster than an undercooked dormouse. You balance the jug of spiced wine, keeping your hand steady. You pour precisely, not too fast, not too slow. You avoid eye contact with the guests unless they signal you. And above all, you stay silent. Until one guest, red-faced and already 3 cups in, grabs your wrist mid-pour. "Where you from?" he slurs. You freeze. Lady Cornelia doesn't look up, but her voice slices through the air. "He's from nowhere that matters, Gaius. Keep your hand to your goblet." Laughter. Tension dissolves. You step back into the shadows. Later, in the slave quarters, Tiro grins. You didn't spill. That's something. That night, as you settle onto your straw mat, Pulcher climbs onto a rafter above your head and drops a grape pit right between your eyes. At least he didn't pee this time. You're starting to understand how the domus breathes. Not metaphorically, though sure, there's a rhythm, but literally. The house wakes up before the sun and exhales its energy into every corridor, every courtyard, every cracked mosaic tile, and you're now part of that system, a very tiny part, like a particularly obedient toe. Your daily routine is becoming frighteningly predictable. Before the first rooster dares to crow, you're up, pulling on your worn tunic and grabbing the broom with the missing bristles. The air is still cool, just barely. The sun hasn't yet turned the walls of the courtyard into toasters. This is the hour when Rome is quiet, which is to say, slightly less loud than usual. You sweep the atrium, careful not to touch the lararium again. You water the garden, though frankly, the grapevines seem to be thriving just to spite you. You wipe the bronze of household deities and refill the incense dish, even though it will just be tipped over by Pulcher, the ever-wretched monkey, in about 10 minutes. At this point, you're convinced he's doing it on purpose. Today you're assigned to the balneum, the bath complex in the back of the domus. Drusus gives you one look and mutters, "Try not to drown." And if you do it in the frigidarium. It's easier to clean. The Roman bath setup is elaborate. You've got the apoditerium, changing room, the tepidarium, warm bath, the caldarium, hot bath, and the frigidarium, cold plunge. Basically, a spa day designed by people who really missed steam and didn't understand mould. You're in charge of heating the caldarium. This means crawling into the hypercaust, the space under the floor, where fires are lit to warm the baths above. It's dark, cramped, and hotter than Vulcan's forge. You're blackened with soot within minutes. Your tunic clings to your back, and you're pretty sure you've inhaled enough ash to qualify as a chimney. Fun fact, Roman underfloor heating was an engineering marvel, but it required constant tending. Slave boys, known as servi balneari, often worked the furnaces and were rarely thanked for their efforts. So congratulations, you're now part of a historic labour tradition that comes with absolutely no perks. When you emerge, dripping and wheezing, Tiro tosses you a damp cloth. "You look like Pluto's left foot." You mutter something about quitting. He laughs. "Where would you go? Back to the monkey?" Speaking of Pulcher, he has somehow escaped again and is currently chasing a serving girl across the peristyle with a stolen sandal in his mouth. Drusus swears in 3 languages before catching him with a net. As the sun climbs, the domus begins its symphony of activity. The cook yells for garlic, Marina screams about soap. A noble guest arrives unannounced, which sends the household into high alert. You are tasked with polishing the bronze door handles urgently. During a brief moment of rest, you sit in the corner of the kitchen and watch as servants prepare the master's midday meal. Fresh bread, olives, roast fish, dates stuffed with nuts and soaked in wine. Your stomach growls. You haven't eaten since dawn. A crust of bread and a ladle of lentil mash that even the rats refused yesterday. Tiro sneaks you half a fig. You try to savour it, but it's gone in one bite. Big feast coming tonight, he whispers, which means more leftovers. You want cheese? Stick near the triclinium. He's not wrong. After dinner, the guests retreat and the scraps are divided. Not fairly, nothing ever is, but better than usual. You snag a wedge of goat cheese and a heel of honey bread and eat like royalty, if royalty ate off chipped plates in a smoky corner of the scullery. That night, after clean-up, you're called back to the balneum. The mistress wants her bath scented with rose oil and sandalwood. You light the incense, adjust the temperature, and keep your eyes down as she enters with 2 attendants. She ignores you completely, which, in this world, is a blessing. The steam curls around the ceiling. Her voice echoes faintly. I heard a slave at the Ludus Maximus burn the caldarium trying to cook a pigeon. One of her attendants titters. They flayed him, of course. Of course, you back out quietly and return to your mat, exhausted. There's no softness to the straw, but your body's too tired to complain. You smell like smoke and wet stone. Your fingers are blistered from hauling amphorae. And yet, part of you has learned how to keep going. Historians still argue whether routine dulled the suffering of Roman slaves or only deepened their sense of entrapment. Some believe the repetition gave comfort. Others say it was a weapon, a way to erase hope. You lie on your side, facing the wall, trying not to think too hard. Tiro shifts on his mat beside you. You lasted another day, he says quietly. Barely, you reply. That's still lasting. And it is. You're starting to notice a pattern. If there's a job that makes people groan, somehow it ends up being yours. Today, the worst of the worst falls into your lap, literally. You're ordered to clean the latrine. Not just use the latrine, scrub it. And it's not just any toilet either. This is a communal multi-seat Roman bathroom with all the elegant touches. Marble seats, classy, a long drainage trench, functional, and, wait for it, a communal sponge on a stick for wiping. That's not a joke, it's real, and it's somehow the least horrifying part of this gig. The smell hits you before the doorway does. Warm, damp, and deeply personal. You gag a little, a fly lands on your eyebrow, and you let it. You've surrendered. Tiro walks past carrying laundry and gives you a cheerful, breathe through your mouth. Thanks, friend. As you scrub stone with vinegar and crushed mint leaves, Roman cleaning staples apparently, you reflect on just how varied Roman slave duties can be. You'd kill to be a librarius, a household scribe, or even a calcarius, a sandal keeper. But instead, you've been temporarily promoted to toilet specialist. You grumble to yourself. This is beneath me. Pulka, the monkey, appears in the doorway, flings a plum pit at your head, and vanishes. You sigh. Right, that tracks. But not all jobs are created equal, or smelly. Drusus finds you later and informs you that you've been volunteered for delivery duty. You'll be escorting a basket of linens to the Fulanica, the laundry workshop down the street. You're handed the basket, which is heavier than it looks, and a stern warning: if you drop the tunics in the gutter, don't bother coming back. The streets of Rome are as chaotic as ever. A goat blocks your path. A cart nearly flattens your toes. Some kid runs past and tries to swipe a fig from your basket, but you give him the death glare you've been practicing. He skitters off. Progress. You arrive at the Fulanica and instantly wish you hadn't. The stench here could punch through marble. You've heard rumours, but now you're living them. Roman laundry involves soaking clothes in urine to lift stains. Yes, actual pee. Collected in jars stationed across the city. One of the launderers nods to you. You the new mule? New what now? You carry, we clean. Unless you want to help with the stomping, you decline. Firmly, they take your basket and pour the linens into a shallow vat of liquid you refuse to identify. Then 2 men step in barefoot and begin stomping like they're crushing grapes. You gag. They laugh. Fun fact, ancient Rome had a tax on urine. The vectigal urinae, instituted by Emperor Vespasian, charged people for collecting and selling public urine for cleaning purposes. When his son protested the vulgarity of taxing pee, Vespasian held up a coin and said, "Money does not stink." That's one way to justify gross profit. Back at the domus, your duties spiral again. You're told to feed the birds in the courtyard. They're doves, supposedly sacred to Venus, though these ones seem mostly interested in pooping on statues. Still, you scatter the seed and try not to get dive-bombed. Then comes your most curious task yet: polishing the mistress's silver mirrors with a paste of chalk and vinegar. As you rub away the tarnish, your reflection appears in the warped surface. Tired eyes, streaked cheeks, dirt smudges, and that look of someone who's trying really hard not to cry over cutlery. Marina passes by and pauses. "You do good work," she says softly. "Thanks. I think the mirror disagrees," she snorts. "Mirrors lie, the mistress says she still looks 20. Despite the exhaustion, you laugh. The afternoon drags into an eerie quiet. Most of the household naps or vanishes into errands. You're sent to organise the storage room, a vaulted chamber filled with amphorae, dusty scrolls, and something pickled in a jar that looks suspiciously like a lizard. You find a torn sandal, a broken wax tablet, and a half-finished figurine of a satyr doing something unmentionable. Roman humour, it turns out, was very much not PG. You also find a stack of old slave tags, small metal discs etched with names and roles. A few are scratched through. You don't ask why. As the sun sets, you're called to the triclinium to assist with a small, informal dinner. You serve olives, wine, and honey cakes. The guests are subdued tonight. One speaks in hushed tones about a tax increase. Another mentions unrest in the provinces. You pick up whispers about a senator's daughter running off with a gladiator, about grain shortages, about a prophecy involving a 2-headed calf. Rome is always on the edge of something. Splendour or chaos, you're never sure. Historians still argue whether slaves were truly invisible during Roman dinner parties, or if their silence was a calculated presence. You've noticed guests glance at you mid-conversation, just briefly, like they know you're listening, like they want you to hear, or maybe they've simply forgotten you're not furniture. After dinner, you help clean. You're careful not to drop any platters. Last time someone shattered one, they spent 2 nights chained in the courtyard. You pass through the hallway, where the household gods flicker in candlelight. You pause, just for a second, then bow your head, not because you believe, but because maybe someone's listening. That night, as you curl onto your mat, you realise something. The worst jobs aren't always the dirtiest. Sometimes, it's the ones that make you feel like you're disappearing that hit the hardest. Tiro murmurs from across the room. Tomorrow's latrine again? No, you sigh. Storage? I think I'm being promoted. Fancy. And despite everything, you almost smile. It's late, past the bell chiming the second watch, when the whispers begin. You're lying on your straw mat, staring at the flickering shadows on the ceiling, when you hear them. Hushed voices, careful laughter, the rustle of blankets shifting. Most of the others are asleep or pretending to be, but in the far corner, by the cracked wall where the wind sneaks in at night, the talking grows. You edge closer, quietly. Tyro's already there, cross-legged and alert, motioning for you to sit. Next to him is Marina, peeling a dried fig with a knife so small it's more sentimental than useful. Across from them sits Rurik, the silent Germanic boy, and a new face, a wiry man, with a deep scar down one cheek. You haven't heard Decimus's story, Tiro says, grinning. The scarred man leans back. It's not a story, it's truth. Even better, Tiro nods. Truth, that sounds like a lie, Decimus begins. His Latin is rough but clear. He was once a hunter near the Alps, capturing animals for Roman games. Bears, wolves, panthers, all drugged and crated and sold. One day, he caught a lioness who had already given birth. She attacked. He survived, barely. They sold me the next week, he finishes, touching the scar. Said I'd make better profit as a wild man in the arena, but I passed out during training. Got tossed into house duty instead. And the lion, Marina asks. He shrugs. Still out there, or maybe in soup. The group laughs, softly but real. You sit in the warmth of shared memory, and soon others chime in. Rurik speaks at last, his voice low and rolling, like water over rocks. He tells of a village beyond the Danube, frozen forests, and a girl with red braids who climbed trees better than any boy. He never says why he left, no one asks. Marina's tale is more bizarre. She claims she once served a governor who swore his cat could predict the weather. If the cat sneezed, it meant rain. If it scratched the wall, it meant visitors. If it vomited, earthquake. Historians still argue whether Romans truly believed in animal omens, she says, half mocking. But my master consulted that cat more than his wife. The conversation flows like river water, bending between memory and myth. You hear of a Nubian who could wrestle two men at once, of a slave girl who stole a senator's ring and bartered it for passage on a merchant ship, of an old woman who cooked with so much garlic she was nicknamed Vulcan's Breath. And all these stories, half whispers in the dark, feel like rebellion. Not open, sword-drawn revolt, but the quiet defiance of memory. Proof that even in chains, people still carry themselves inside. Later, when the room stills again, you lie awake thinking of your own story. You don't remember much, how you got here, where you came from. But bits and pieces stir at the edges of your mind. A smell, a sound, a feeling of grass between your toes maybe, or someone. Calling your name that isn't Nova, you clutch that thought like a thread. Thin, fragile, yours. The next day, things are back to business. You're assigned to serve guests at a midday meal, and the guest of honour today is a senator. Grey-haired, gold-ringed, with a neck like a sack of flour, and opinions on everything. He slurs halfway through the wine course. Slaves these days, he complains, gesturing at you with a greasy finger. No loyalty, no spine, not like in the old days. You resist the urge to roll your eyes, barely. The senator leans toward Drusus. You know what the empire needs. Fewer laws, more whips. Keep them afraid, that's how you run a household. Drusus gives a neutral grunt. He's good at that. Later in the kitchen you replay the senator's words and feel something twist inside. Not rage, not sadness exactly. Just a deep, hollow ache, like being seen only as a shadow of a person, over and over, wears a hole in you. That night, another gathering happens by the wall. More stories, more secrets. Tiro tells of a shipwreck he survived. Not first-hand, but a tale passed down from a Greek boy he once bunked with. The boy had floated for 2 days on driftwood, sunburned and delirious, before being scooped up by a merchant ship headed for Rome. Probably ended up scrubbing floors just like us, Rurik says. Or dead, Marina adds helpfully. Or, you offer, he became rich and lives in a villa on the coast with 10 dogs, and a couch made of figs. Tiro snorts. You dream weird. You dream hopeful, is what you don't say. It's in these moments you start to understand something deeper. This isn't just a place where labour happens. It's a place where lives are contained but not always erased. Stories preserve what the body endures. Memory becomes armour. You begin to collect your own stories too. Little ones, like the time the master tripped over Pulchra and blamed the garden boy. Or when Lady Cornelia's prized goose escaped into the street and had to be chased by 5 fully grown adults in sandals. Or when Tiro pretended to be mute for 2 weeks just to avoid fetching scrolls for the master's tedious poetry recitals. None of it changes your status. but it gives you pieces of yourself to hold on to. Historians still argue whether slave networks across Rome maintained consistent oral traditions, or if each household operated in isolation. From what you've seen, whispers travel faster than coins, and last longer. You wonder what would happen if someone wrote it all down. Not the triumphs of emperors or wars fought on elephant back, but this: the scraped knees, the shared figs, the stolen minutes after curfew, when a circle of people sit close and remember who they were. Maybe one day you'll find a way to tell the whole thing. Maybe someone will listen. The golden boy arrives the next morning, just as you're dumping a bucket of dishwater into the alley behind the domus. He steps from a polished carriage with sunlight glinting off his sandals, his teeth blinding, his tunic spotless. You know the type, even if you've never seen him before. Everyone stands straighter. Drusus appears flustered for once. "That's Faustus," he mutters to you. "Don't look him in the eyes unless he tells you to." That's not creepy at all. Faustus is young, maybe 17, with curled hair that looks like it's never known humidity, and a voice like lukewarm honey. He kisses Lady Cornelia's ring, bows dramatically, and declares, "Ah, home again." You whisper to Tiro, "Who is he?" "Her nephew," Tiro says flatly. "He was being educated in Greece. Now he's back to remind us he knows more Plato than we do." You soon learn that Faustus is what Romans call a deliciae, a household favourite. Not a slave, not exactly a guest, just someone who exists above the rules. He's allowed in places you're not, says things you can't, eats the good fruit, the really good fruit. You're reassigned for the week to assist him. That means running errands, adjusting his seat cushions, fetching sandals, and pretending not to notice when he throws grapes at birds in the garden for sport. "Massage," he snaps one afternoon, pointing to his shoulders. You hesitate. He doesn't like that. "I said now, Nova," Tiro mouths. "Just do it." You do. Faustus complains you're too rough, then too gentle, then accuses you of pulling his hair when you definitely didn't. And yet, despite all his drama, he fascinates you. He's educated, yes, but he says things no other Roman here would say aloud. He complains about the Senate, jokes that the gods are bored little children. He asks you where you're from, and even if it's condescending, he asks. "I had a dog once," he says, between bites of honeyed pear. "Named him after Achilles. I cried for 2 days when he died. My tutor said I was unsuitable for public office." He laughs. He wasn't wrong. And for a moment he seems almost human. Then he tosses the pear core at your head and says, "Clean that." You want to hate him, you do, but you can't shake the feeling that Faustus is a prisoner of his own kind. Just in better clothes. One day, he insists on a poetry recital in the triclinium. The other slaves groan silently. You're stationed at the wine jug again, forced to listen as he mangles lines from Virgil while reclining like a dramatic sculpture that's forgotten how to sit normally. When he pauses, looking for approval, Lady Cornelia claps softly. "Lovely Faustus? Truly?" Then she turns to Drusus. "Has that new one, Nova was it, been useful?" Drusus doesn't look at you. He's still breathing. That's a start. They laugh. You smile politely and imagine dropping the wine jug on Faustus's toes. During the evenings, Faustus roams the courtyard, humming snatches of Greek songs. One night, he finds you refilling oil lamps and says, "You're lucky, you know. You don't have to pretend all day." You blink. Pretend what? That you enjoy this city, that you belong to it. That's the closest thing to a compliment you've ever gotten from him. Still, you learn quickly to stay on his good side. Once you overhear him telling Lady Cornelia that a kitchen boy looked at him strangely. That boy was sold 2 days later. Historians still debate the influence of delicia in Roman households. Some argue they were mere pets, pampered and powerless. Others suggest they held quiet power, favoured enough to shape decisions, whisper suggestions, tilt the axis of a family's fortune. Faustus certainly tilts things. One afternoon, he's showing off in the garden, racing one of the house slaves around the impluvium. You're cleaning nearby. Faustus loses dramatically, then insists the race was rigged. That's what happens, he says to no one in particular, when people born to labour forget their place. The laughter from the other slaves stops cold. Later, back in the quarters, Marina mutters, "That boy's going to be a senator someday. God's help us." Or emperor, Tiro groans. You dream that night of Faustus on a golden throne, hurling grapes from the heavens. But there are other sides to him too. You once catch him kneeling quietly in the lararium, whispering something with a tremble in his voice. Another time, you find him drawing in the dirt. Tiny faces, animals, even a little chariot. When he sees you, he covers it with his cloak like a guilty child. He says nothing, but he doesn't tell on you either. You begin to suspect that Faustus, for all his flair, isn't sure who he is yet. He plays roles, scholar, poet, tyrant, but none seem to fit fully. He's like a coin tossed in the air, gold on both sides, but spinning, uncertain. You're summoned to help him pack for a short trip to the countryside. He makes a show of sighing as you fold his tunics. "I shall miss your dull expressions," he says. "They're very grounding." You bow just enough to pass as respectful. Safe travels, Dominus. As he leaves, Pulcher the monkey launches a date pit that hits Faustus squarely in the back of the head. For once, Faustus laughs. You and Tiro both sigh in unison. "Maybe he'll fall in a well," Tiro says. "Maybe he'll write a poem about it," you reply. Either way, the house is quieter without him. It starts with a giggle, not one of the shrill, echoing laughs you usually hear from the mistresses during dinner, or the full-bellied cackles from kitchen staff after a particularly spicy joke about Drusus's sandals. No, this is softer, like bubbles popping in warm water. You're in the peristyle garden trimming hedges. Well, pretending to. Your shears are blunt, and the hedge is growing sideways out of sheer spite. You don't notice her at first, not until she inches into view from behind a fig tree, hair braided with tiny gold beads and eyes full of mischief. "I don't think that hedge is afraid of you," she says. You blink. That's definitely the master's daughter. She's maybe 10, 11 at most, dressed in fine linen with sandals so clean they might be enchanted. You bow, of course, but not before she grins and says, "Stop that. Everyone bows, it's boring." She introduces herself as Livia, and just like that, your chores are no longer solitary. For the next week, she becomes your tiny whirlwind shadow. She asks questions, so many questions about everything. What do slaves dream about? Do the gods punish people with dirty feet? Can a monkey become consul if he knows Latin? That last one was clearly about Pulcher, who now spends his afternoons sleeping on stolen pillows and flinging apricot stones from the balcony like Zeus hurling thunderbolts. You try not to answer too much. Drusus warned you, never get too friendly. Distance keeps everyone safe. But Livia has the charm of a kitten and the persistence of a goat. You break eventually. During one of your lamp-filling duties, she follows you with a torch, very unsafe, and insists on helping. "I want to know how things really work," she says, "not what my tutor tells me." "You shouldn't be here," you murmur, looking both ways. "I'm always here," she replies, and it's true. She's good at sneaking, like a pint-sized Mercury in sandals. And then one day, she brings you a honey cake. You almost drop it. It's small, sweet-smelling, topped with a single candied fig. She wraps it in a cloth and slips it into your hand, behind a column. "They said you used to cry when Pulcher bit you," she whispers. "This is for surviving." Pulcher appears right on cue, scowling as if he knows he's been replaced. That evening, as you lie on your mat nibbling the cake in secret, Tiro raises an eyebrow. Are you being groomed for something terrible? Or are you her new pet? You shrug. Both? You better hope she forgets you exist before she gets bored. You know he's right, but part of you, some quiet, rebellious part, enjoys being seen. Not as a tool or furniture or liability, but as a person, even if only by a precocious child with no real power. Livia is curious about everything. She asks you to describe animals you've seen, food you miss, people from your before. You make some of it up. She doesn't care. One afternoon she drags you into the library. You panic at first. Slaves aren't allowed in there unless summoned. But she insists. It's not reading if I'm the one holding the scroll. She unrolls one and makes you listen, as she dramatically mispronounces names. This one's about Aeneas. Oh, whatever. He fights a guy. People die. You stifle a laugh. She tosses a scroll at you. Tell me a story. You do. A small one. About a rabbit that outwits a lion. It's a folk tale you think you half remember, from a long time ago. She claps at the ending. That rabbit should be emperor. Historians still argue whether storytelling between slaves and Roman elite children was tolerated, encouraged, or discouraged altogether. You murmur aloud. She frowns. Is that part of the story? You nod. Sure, it's a fringe subplot. Sometimes, though, you're reminded of the lines you shouldn't cross. One day, Livia draws you a picture. Crude stick figures, a monkey wearing a crown, and you with a sword. She hands it to you proudly. Drusus spots it. His face darkens. That goes in the fire. Now, you obey. The edges blacken, curl, and vanish. That night, he pulls you aside. I know you think you're clever, he says quietly. But attachments are dangerous. She's a child. You're not. She's just curious, you reply. She won't always be. One day she'll be her mother, and you'll still be scrubbing mosaics. It hits hard. The next morning, you're reassigned to stable cleaning. You don't see Livia for 3 days. Part of you is relieved. The other part listens for her every time a door creaks open. Finally, she finds you again. You're ankle deep in hay and horse manure. She climbs the fence in sandals she should absolutely not be wearing and offers a fig. I missed you, she says. The horses are boring. They don't talk. They do, you reply. They just think in hooves. She laughs, full and bright. Later, as she leaves, she turns. You're not like the others. You want to say something meaningful. Instead you wave. It's enough. You know this bond can't last. One day, she'll be married off to someone 3 times her age, handed over like a crate of amphorae. She'll forget your name, or pretend to. But right now, you're part of her world. And she's cracked open yours. You're still a slave, but you're not invisible, not to her. It begins as a joke, just a whisper in the scullery between trays of half-eaten figs and the evening washing of the amphorae. You know, Tiro says, barely above her breath, there's a tunnel under the baths. You glance up from your scrubbing. A tunnel? He nods, eyes darting around. Old brickwork near the Hippocaust leads out under the street, maybe farther. Marina snorts. And maybe it leads straight into the jaws of Cerberus. Don't fill his head with ghost stories. But Tiro's expression is different this time. Less teasing, more charged. I've seen it, he insists. Not the whole thing, just the opening. Guarded but barely. You try to focus on the oily amphora you're polishing, but the idea plants itself like a seed behind your ribs. A tunnel, a way out. Not just stories and scraps and survival, but movement, escape. Of course, escape is unthinkable and constant. No one says it aloud, but everyone thinks about it. During the long walks to the market, during the silent hours polishing bronze, during the thud of sandals, when someone's dragged off for punishment. They think, what if? So do you. That night, after the lights are out, and the household has settled into its sleep cycle of snores, mutters, and Pulcher chewing something questionable in the rafters. You lie wide-eyed, a tunnel. You press your hand into the straw mat beneath you, feeling the cool stone under your palm. Somewhere beneath this floor, maybe, a path waits. The next day, you test the waters. Drusus sends you to the bathhouse to help stoke the Hippocaust fire again. The same miserable crawl space, the same blackened bricks. But this time, you look more closely. Behind the fire basin, half covered by a pile of broken tiles, is a seam in the stonework. Just a shadow at first. But when you shift a few bricks, casually, As if you're just sweeping, you feel it. Air. Faint but real. The breath of something hidden. You step back quickly, heart hammering. Too much, too fast, but the tunnel is real. That night, you whisper it to Tiro and Rurik. Marina listens from her mat, arms crossed, brow furrowed. We'd never make it, she mutters. You don't even know where it goes, Rurik adds. Exactly, Tiro says, eyes shining, which means the guards don't either. You all go quiet when footsteps pass the doorway. Just a guard making rounds. Still your breath catches. Pulka farts from the rafters, and the tension breaks, but the idea stays. Over the next week, you watch the household more carefully. You learn the rhythms of the guards, when they're alert, when they doze. You notice who drinks too much wine at dinner, who lingers by the baths, who leaves doors ajar. You hear things too. One of the stable boys claims a man once escaped and lived in the sewers for 3 months. Another says he saw a woman smuggled out in a grain cart. Someone else mutters that there are smugglers near. The Tiber, who'll take a runaway, for a price. And then there's the old man in the kitchen, silent for weeks, who suddenly says, the best time to run is during the rains. Dogs can't follow the scent. You all freeze, but he just goes back to peeling onions, like he didn't just drop a bombshell. Historians still argue whether Roman slaves truly plotted escapes with this level of detail, or if most simply ran when the opportunity struck. But what you're living is neither impulsive nor dramatic. It's slow, patient, like watching water hollow out stone. Your chance arrives during a storm. The sky cracks open with thunder, and rain turns the courtyard into a slippery mess of marble and mud. The guards grumble. Lady Cornelia retreats to her chambers. The cook slips and curses so loudly, you think she might be struck by Jupiter himself. Tiro appears at your side. Tonight? You glance at Rurik. He nods once. You're scared. Of course you are. But you're also ready. That evening, you clean faster, eat slower, memorize every face in the slave quarters, like it's the last time you'll see them. Marina catches your gaze, doesn't ask anything, just presses a folded piece of bread into your hand. If you live, she says softly, tell them Marina was funny. You almost laugh. The storm builds through the night. You wait. Time slows. Every creak of wood, every drip of water feels monumental. Finally, when the guards settle into their wine-dulled haze, you and the others slip from your mats and pad barefoot through the corridor. Past the lararium, past the monkey's perch. He squeaks once but doesn't sound the alarm. Maybe even he knows. In the bathhouse the air is thick with steam and soot. The fire is low. You move quickly, shifting the bricks, slipping through the narrow gap behind the hypercaust. And there it is, the tunnel. Narrow, wet, reeking of mildew, a leftover from older times, possibly a drainage route or a forgotten escape passage built during civil unrest. Who knows? You don't care. You're moving. For the first time in what feels like forever, you're moving towards something. The passage is tight. You crawl. Your hands slip on the damp stone. Tiro grunts behind you. Rurik mutters something in his native tongue that sounds like a prayer or a curse. You have no idea how long you move like that, in silence, except for the dripping of water and the scraping of knees. Then, light. Diamond soys flickering. And footsteps, not yours. Your first instinct is to freeze. The light sways closer, orange and soft like a lantern, followed by the unmistakable echo of leather soles on wet stone. Not a guard's heavy boots, quieter, but still purposeful. You press yourself against the wall of the tunnel, motioning frantically to Tiro and Rurik behind you. They stop instantly, breath shallow. Tiro's eyes are wide. Rurik's hand reaches for a stone on the ground, like it's a weapon. The footsteps pause. Then a voice, calm, male, with a faint accent. I wouldn't go that way, friends. You squint. A figure steps forward, lantern raised. He's wiry, wrapped in a hooded cloak, soaked from the rain. His eyes gleam with the wary sharpness of someone who's seen everything twice and still doesn't trust it. "I mean it," he says, not unkindly. "It floods further down. You'll be swimming in rat bathwater before you get halfway to the street." You say nothing. You don't trust him, but you don't move either. "You're not the first," he continues, "but you could be the first in a while to not get caught. I assume that's what you're aiming for." Tiro leans in. "Who are you?" The man chuckles. "Someone who doesn't like slaves getting dragged back in chains, let's say." You still don't move. The air is thick with tension. Even the tunnel seems to hold its breath. He raises his free hand. "Look, I'm not going to drag you out. You've made it this far, which is more than most. I just think you should know. There's a better path. Drier too." "Why help us?" Rurik grunts. The man tilts his head. "Because someone helped me once." He steps aside, pointing to a narrow crevice, barely noticeable, behind a pile of fallen bricks. "You go left, you risk drowning. You go with me, you risk, well, maybe freedom." Historians still debate whether organised underground slave networks existed in Rome, something like a primitive resistance. There are fringe accounts of sympathetic plebeians, even senators, secretly helping runaways vanish. Others argue those are modern romanticisms. But right now, with this man before you, it doesn't feel romantic. It feels terrifying and real. You choose. The three of you follow. He leads you not out of the tunnel, but deeper into its belly. The space widens, then narrows, then twists like it was built by drunken moles. You try to memorize the turns, but quickly lose track. You're underground, wet, tired, and still hearing your heartbeat in your ears. Eventually, the tunnel opens into a chamber. Stone-walled, candle-lit, lined with crates and worn mats. You smell bread, smoke, oil. Someone's been living here. There's a woman stirring a pot of something on a fire. She doesn't look surprised to see you. Just tired. She nods toward the far side. Let them rest. They look half dead. Tiro collapses onto a mat. Rurik sits cross-legged, watching everything. You're still on, your feet waiting for the trick, the trap, the moment when the walls close in, and someone says, "Back to the mines with you." But it doesn't come. Instead, the man sets the lantern down and offers you a bowl of something hot. Lentils and garlic. The taste is heavenly. "I'm called Marcus," he says. "I was once a scribe, then a debtor, then a slave, now something else." You finally speak. "Is this a hiding place?" He nods. "For a little while." "You're not the only ones who've come through," the woman speaks up. "One left last week, bought passage on a merchant ship. Another left yesterday, headed north. You go when the way is safe." You glance at your companions. Safe is such a funny word now. Like normal. Like free. The rain still drums above, muffled by layers of earth and brick. The chamber smells of old stone, a new hope. But then, a sound. Distant, sharp. A shout. Your whole body tenses. Marcus curses under his breath. They're sweeping the streets again, looking for runaways. You almost ask, how did they know? Then you remember something from earlier that week, when you dropped a goblet and a steward gave you an odd look. Or that time Faustus stared too long, when you were mapping the hallway with your eyes. Maybe someone noticed, maybe someone said something. Maybe escape isn't as invisible as you'd hoped. You sleep in shifts that night. One eye open, hand on the worn stone beside your mat, like it'll anchor you to something solid. Sometime in the early hours, you wake to find Marcus wrapping bundles in cloth. "Where are you going?" you whisper. Checking the back tunnel, seeing if it's clear. If it is, we move. You nod. Your limbs ache, your eyes burn, but you feel something rising in your chest that you haven't felt in days, weeks, maybe since the slave market. A heartbeat that doesn't just mean survival, a heartbeat that means possibility. Later that morning, Marcus returns, wet, silent, but with a half smile. "It's open," he says. "For now?" You eat one last bowl of lentils. Rurik sharpens a stick just in case. Tiro finds a length of cloth and wraps it around his feet like shoes. No one says much. There's nothing to say. You're still slaves. Just slaves with a plan. As you gather your few possessions, a rag, a crust of bread, a stone Marina once gave you for luck, you turn to Marcus. What happens if we're caught? He looks at you, not unkindly. Then we're caught. But at least it wasn't because we didn't try. You follow him into the tunnel again, deeper this time. It smells worse. It's darker. And ahead, wind. Real wind. Not the damp air of a hippocaust, but air that's been touched by the sky. And then, voices. Distant, barking, shouting. They're coming. You duck low, back pressed to the wet tunnel wall, heart pounding against your ribs, like a signal drum. Behind you, Tiro stumbles on the slick stone, catching himself just in time to avoid a full-body splash into a questionable puddle. Ahead, Marcus lifts a hand. Wait. The voices grow louder. 2, maybe 3 men, one deeper than the rest. A guard? No, you've heard enough guards to know they shout with their chest. This is different. Focused. Someone searching. Dogs, Rurik whispers. And there it is, the low guttural snuffling sound of something with teeth and a grudge. You curse silently. Of course they brought dogs. Marcus hisses, "Follow me." Now. He veers off the main path, slipping into a side corridor so narrow you have to walk sideways, shoulders scraping damp brick on either side. The air is staler here, older. You pass iron rings embedded in the wall, long rusted over. A cistern, Marcus whispers. Old storm drain. No one uses it anymore. No one but us, the woman, her name is Lelia, you learned, adds from the rear. As the barking fades behind, you breathe, barely. The new path is tighter but dry, sloping upward. It smells of mildew, rats, and maybe something pickled, but it's freedom-scented to you. Eventually, the tunnel spits you out into a shadowed alcove behind a set of tall, mossy stones. Above, moonlight filters through a grating. "We're in the Cloaca Maxima," Marcus murmurs. The name sounds like an insult, but it's not. It's real. One of Rome's greatest engineering feats. The grand sewer that keeps the city from drowning in its own waste. Fact drop, the Cloaca Maxima began as an open-air canal over 500 years earlier, eventually roofed over and expanded by generations of engineers. Though designed for water, it had long become an underground highway for refuse, runoff, and sometimes people like you. Marcus helps you up a slippery incline. You grab a vine-covered ledge and pull yourself out into the open air for the first time in days. And the sky, gods above, the sky. It's so wide it makes you dizzy. The storm has passed, but droplets still hang in the air, like the earth hasn't fully exhaled yet. You take it in all at once. Rooftops like jagged teeth, laundry lines dancing in the breeze, the scent of wet stone and charred wood from some far-off hearth. Tiro grins like he's never seen clouds before. Rurik squints warily at the open expanse, already scanning for danger. You just breathe, but you don't have long. A horn sounds in the distance, then another. Call and response, you recognise it now. Slave alert. A city-wide signal to watch for escapees. Your blood runs cold. Marcus leads you into the alleys, zigzagging like a snake. You dodge a pair of drunk merchants singing off-key. You hide behind barrels as a Praetorian patrol clanks past, half-armoured and half asleep. You pass beggars and fishmongers, cats and cracked statues, a drunk vomiting into an urn shaped like Minerva. Everything is alive. Everything is dangerous. Eventually, you duck into a low archway that opens into a courtyard filled with broken columns and overgrown weeds. A boy waits there, barefoot, holding a torch. He nods at Marcus. The boat's waiting. "Boat?" Tiro gasps. Marcus grins. "You thought we were just going to walk out of Rome?" You move fast now, past darkened temples, down a stairwell cut into the hillside, then onto a rickety dock, half swallowed by reeds. There, tied loosely to a post, is a boat. Not much of one. A fishing skiff patched with tar and faith. The boy tosses you each a hooded cloak. "Put these on. Don't speak." Rurik tests the weight of the boat before climbing in. Tiro nearly trips on the edge, and you catch his arm. "Nova," he says quietly. "This might be the dumbest thing we've ever done." You nod. "And the best." The boat pushes off, gliding silently into the black ribbon of the Tiber. The city recedes behind you, a silhouette of towers, fires, and stone. Rome, the heart of the world, now just a shrinking outline under the stars. You try not to look back, but of course you do. You think of the domus, of the servants and their careful routines, of Livia and her honey cakes and her endless questions, of Marina muttering in the dark, of Pulcher, probably asleep in a pile of stolen fruit, and then you think, none of that is yours anymore. You've broken something, a rule, a wall, maybe a life, and there's no undoing it. But before you can sink too deep into guilt, there's a thud. The boat lurches slightly. Marcus stands, peering ahead. "Branches," he mutters. "We're fine." Until the second thud. Not wood, footsteps. From the bank ahead, torchlight flares. 3 figures. Waiting. You duck low in the boat, heart thudding so loudly, you're convinced it's louder than the oars. The torchlight on the bank flickers, casting long, distorted shadows across the water. 3 figures. Too still. Too calm. You've seen enough guards to know. They're waiting because they know someone is coming. Marcus curses under his breath and gestures toward the reeds. "Hold steady. We drift past. No sudden moves." Tiro nods and slips further into the cloak. Barely more than a bundle of limbs and panic. Rurik, ever the mountain, grips the edge of the boat tightly. Eyes locked on the figures, like he's calculating how many steps it would take to reach them if he had to swim and fight. The boat coasts closer. Still no reaction. Then one of the men raises a hand and whistles, not to the boat, but to someone behind him. A second light appears, further up the bank. You freeze. They're not blocking your path. They're tracking you. Marcus hisses, "Change course." The boy rowing, bless him, calmly shifts the rudder. The boat veers subtly toward the opposite bank, hidden more now by overgrowth and low fog. Water laps gently against the wood. Every sound feels like thunder. Then just as you begin to exhale, the bark of a voice. "You there?" Torchlight flares. A shout. Then another. Your cloak slips slightly, and you yank it back down. "Row!" Marcus growls. The boy obeys, and the chase is on. From the bank comes the scramble of feet, clattering armour, a shouted order. The soldiers, because yes, they're clearly soldiers now, run parallel to your boat, flanking you along the shoreline. One has a rope, another draws a blade. They're guessing where you'll land. You don't wait to find out if they're right. Rurik grabs a broken oar and begins paddling with brute strength. Water flies. Tiro clutches the side and yells over the wind. "They're splitting up," Marcus yells back. "Then so do we." "What?" But he's already grabbing you. "Nova, jump when I say. Not now. Wait. Now." You leap from the boat. The water is colder than a punishment, thick and biting. You surface gasping, the weight of your soaked cloak threatening to pull you under. Somewhere nearby, Tiro splashes, coughing. Marcus grabs your arm and pulls. You wade to the shallows, hidden by reeds. From the riverbank comes chaos. Someone's fallen. Someone else is yelling, "Get the torch." I saw 3 of them. Where's the other? You don't wait to find out who the other is. You and Marcus crash into the undergrowth, dripping, breathless, alive. Tiro joins moments later, soaked and shaking. "Rurik!" Marcus looks back toward the boat, just in time to see it swerve, crash into a log, and tip. A shape, Rurik, emerges from the wreck, drenched but still standing. He gives a quick nod. Somehow, against all odds, you're all still here. You limp away from the river, shivering. Marcus leads you up a narrow path, carved into the hill. Each step squelches. The city lights disappear behind you, Rome fading into mist and trees. Finally, you collapse behind a broken stone wall on the outskirts of a vineyard. The torches are distant now, just glowing suggestions, and for the first time since the escape began, no one speaks. You're too cold to think, too alive to sleep. Eventually, Marcus breaks the silence. They won't chase past the road. They don't care about what happens in the countryside. Why, you ask, still coughing river water? Because it's not their problem, he says flatly. Once you leave Rome, you're just another body. Unless someone really wants you back. You huddle with the others near a ruined oven, using body heat and irony to stay warm. Tiro whispers, "Did we just escape?" You nod slowly. "For now," he grins, and that's when you hear it. A distant sound, faint but unmistakable. The roar of a crowd. You look to Marcus. He chuckles. "That," he says, "is the arena." You stare at him. "Tomorrow's show," he adds. "The Lannister bring in the beasts early. I heard they've got elephants this time. Maybe even a rhino. Big event." You blink. "How is that relevant?" He shrugs. "It's not, but it means the city's distracted. Good for us." He pulls a crumpled scroll from his cloak. It's barely legible. Smudged ink. A rough map. "See here?" he says, pointing. "This is where we go next." You peer at it. Hills, roads, a symbol that looks like a fish. A name. Castellinum. Friend of mine runs a vineyard. Harbours those who need hiding. From there, maybe north. Gaul, maybe even Britannia. Ever seen a druid? They're weird. You exhale. Historians still argue whether large-scale escape routes for slaves existed across the Roman countryside, or if survivors simply disappeared into local villages and forests. Either way, escape wasn't freedom. It was just the next version of survival. You stare out over the vineyard. The sky's lighter now. Pale grey. Morning is coming. Tiro leans against your shoulder. "Guess we're not gladiators," he mutters. "Not yet." You all laugh, quietly, brokenly. But it's laughter. Tomorrow you'll move again. Today, you just breathe. And hope no one wakes up looking for a runaway monkey named Pulcher. You wake to birdsong. Not the caged kind you heard in the atrium of the domus, but wild chirps. Honest, chaotic, too loud. You're lying on damp grass in a ditch beside a vineyard wall, your tunic still clinging to your skin from the river escape. Above, the sky has turned a reluctant grey-blue. Clouds cling to the hills like toga folds, and the air smells of wet leaves and earth. A breeze rolls through, sharp and clean, and for a second, you forget you're on the run. Then your back reminds you. Every bone aches. You roll onto your side and groan. Marcus is already awake, leaning against a tree stump and scanning the horizon like it owes him money. Rurik is chewing something that may or may not be a raw onion. Tiro is curled up under his cloak, snoring softly. You sit up and ask, "How far to Castellinum?" "Far enough," Marcus replies. "Too far to walk without help." "But we're walking," Rurik grunts. "Until we find a cart or a donkey that's willing to be stolen," Marcus adds, not quite joking. The journey begins slowly. Every step is loud in your joints. Your feet slide in your sandals, still waterlogged and growing moss in the corners. But the land opens up into rolling hills, olive groves, scattered farms. It's nothing like the city. You begin to feel very small. You pass a shepherd at one point. He watches you with narrowed eyes, doesn't say anything, doesn't shout, just watches, then disappears over the rise. Marcus mutters, "He saw us?" That's a coin toss. Might say nothing. Might tell the next patrol. Do we keep going? We always keep going. By midday, your stomach feels like a collapsed amphora. Tiro finds a fig tree. You eat greedily, too fast, and spend the next hour regretting it. Rurik insists on boiling water before drinking, using an old trick involving hot stones and a cracked clay cup. And then, a miracle, you meet a cart. A bent old man with a donkey the size of a wine barrel. He's hauling olive oil and amphorae. Marcus approaches cautiously, palms raised. "We're travellers, pilgrims. Even the man eyes you all. You look like laundry. Laundry that needs a ride." After some bartering and a loaf of stale bread, he agrees to let you ride in the back, as long as you stay quiet and don't touch the amphorae. "Break one," he warns, "and I'll break you." The cart creaks along the road, the donkey snorting every few steps. You lie in the shade of a woven tarp, staring up at the sky through holes in the weave. And that's when you meet the scholar. Not in person, in story. Marcus begins talking, softly, almost to himself. Once knew a man, Greek, a slave, like us, but before that, he was a scholar, a real one, taught in Athens, knew poetry, science, even medicine. Tiro perks up. What happened to him? Rome happened. He was captured in a border raid, sold as a tutor, moved through 5 households, each time a little more bitter. Did he ever escape? Marcus shakes his head. Number. But he did something else. What? He wrote. That gets your attention. Wrote what, you ask? Everything, Marcus says. Stories, lessons, dreams, his life. In secret, on scraps of parchment. Said if he couldn't live free, he'd at least leave a voice behind. You're quiet for a moment. What happened to the writings? Marcus shrugs. Burned maybe, lost, or maybe they're still hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. The cart jostles. You stare at your hands. You don't know how to write, not yet, but suddenly the thought of it feels like oxygen. Historians still debate whether literate slaves in Rome had any real means of preserving their stories. Some argue literacy was a privilege tightly controlled. Others point to graffiti, letters, and fragments that suggest resistance through record. It's possible, they say, that a great many voices were written down, then buried, lost, or erased. You imagine parchment, rolled and tied, hidden under a floorboard, a life flattened into ink. It makes your chest ache. As the day wears on, you notice Marcus favouring his leg. You pull him aside during a rest stop. You're limping, he waves it off. Old wound, from before Rome. It flares when I walk too long. Tiro overhears. We could stop. No, Marcus snaps, then softens. Stopping is worse. By dusk, the cart reaches a narrow valley lined with cypress trees. The road bends to reveal a cluster of villas, modest but tidy. A vineyard stretches across the slope, like green lace. This is it, Marcus says. Castellinum. You exhale. You climb off the cart, thank the driver, and walk slowly toward the nearest house. A woman stands on the porch, arms crossed. Her hair is grey, her expression unreadable. Marcus approaches her, with something between respect and hope. Aquila, he says. She doesn't smile. You're late. Still alive, though. She looks at you, then at Tiro and Rurik. Her eyes linger longest on you. You brought children? We brought survivors. She sighs, then opens the door. Come inside, before someone sees you. The house is quiet, warm. She sets out bread and water, nothing more. We rest tonight, Marcus says, then decide tomorrow. You nod, but part of you already knows. You're not done running, but you're also not done hoping. Morning comes softly. Birds chirp outside the window. The breeze smells of crushed vines and damp earth. You're curled on a straw mat in the corner of Aquila's wine storage room. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, you don't wake to shouting or footsteps or the slap of a whip on stone. You almost sleep in. Almost. But your stomach growls like a lion, and the aches in your limbs remind you you're not quite out of danger yet. Tiro is already awake, sitting on an overturned amphora, chewing a fig leaf like it's gum. He's watching the window. Something's wrong, he murmurs. What? He points out the narrow opening. You shuffle over and peek through. Smoke. Not the lazy, curling kind that drifts from chimneys. This is darker. Denser. Rising in thick plumes from somewhere just beyond the ridge. And with the smoke comes noise. Clanging bells. Distant shouting. Panic. Rurik enters, holding a half loaf of bread. He sets it down without a word. Marcus steps in last. No cloak. No lantern. Just a hard expression. There's plague in the city, you blink. What? He nods. A merchant passed through town last week. He was coughing. Died 2 days later. Now the whole street is quarantined. Soldiers have cordoned the West Road. Aquila enters from the kitchen, apron smeared with grape skins. The city's closing in on itself, she mutters. No one's allowed in or out without papers. They're turning back caravans, inspecting farms. And we're 4 strangers in a farmhouse, Marcus finishes. The plague. Historians still argue which of Rome's many outbreaks this could have been. Some blame typhus, others influenza, or even a form of hemorrhagic fever. Whatever it was, it had one consistent feature: fear. Suddenly the safety you felt last night feels like a soap bubble. Do we leave, you ask? Marcus doesn't answer. Instead, he walks to a wooden crate and opens it. Inside, cloaks, sandals, empty scroll cases, a few old coins, a vial of ink. Supplies, Aquila says, for those passing through. You watch as Marcus selects a worn tunic and hands it to you. You'll go as a student. A student of what? He smiles faintly. Agriculture. No one ever questions a farm apprentice. Just keep your head down and say yes, dominus to everything. Tiro gets a shepherd's cloak. Rurik, a mule driver's vest. These aren't disguises, Marcus says. They're masks, temporary ones, just enough to move. That afternoon, a soldier rides by on horseback. He doesn't stop, but his gaze lingers on the house longer than you like. Aquila notices. You should leave by dawn. That night, the fear feels different. Not sharp like the threat of chains. This is slower, like rot. The idea that anyone could be infected, that a cough could get you killed, or worse, reported. You sit with Marcus under the stars. I don't get it, you admit. If Rome is sick, shouldn't people care less about chasing slaves? He chuckles. Number. They care more. When the world crumbles, people cling harder to control. Chasing you makes them feel like someone's still in charge. You shiver. Tiro joins you, holding a half-melted candle. Aquila said the farmer down the road is gone. Entire family. Cart left in the middle of the field. Rurik grunts. We go now. Soon, Marcus says. But not yet. Night is still dangerous. You glance at the horizon. A haze hangs above the hills like a bruise. And then the most unexpected thing happens. A knock. Everyone freezes. 3 raps. Software polite. The kind of knock you'd give before entering a guest room. Not something you expect in a hiding place during a plague. Aquila moves first. She opens the door a crack. A man stands there, cloaked, hooded. His hands are raised. I'm not a soldier, he says quickly. Please, I have word for Marcus. Your stomach clenches. Marcus steps forward. Name. The man glances behind him. Then says, Lucian. From Ostia, Marcus exhales slowly. He's real. Lucian steps inside. He's wet from rain, face drawn. He pulls a scroll from under his cloak. This came through the port before they shut it down. Name on it matched a description. He hands it to Marcus. Thought it might matter. Marcus unrolls the scroll, squinting. His eyes widen. You lean in. What is it? He turns it around. It's a slave notice, a listing, issued from House Cornelia. 3 names. One description reads unmistakably, Nova, male, dark hair, scar left wrist. Dangerous. Reward for return. Tiro reads over your shoulder. Dangerous? They think I'm dangerous. Marcus laughs bitterly. You ran. You saw things. Maybe they think you know something. Maybe Livia said something. Maybe Faustus got bored and pointed a finger. You sink to the ground. They'll be looking harder now, Lucian says, even with the sickness spreading, especially. Then we leave tonight, Marcus says. There's no more waiting. The vineyard blurs around you. The shadows, the candlelight, the sound of Rurik sharpening his blade on a rock. The way Tiro quietly pushes a cloak toward you, saying nothing, and you realise, again, that safety is always rented, never owned. That night, just before you leave, Aquila gives you each a wax tablet. Write something, she says. 1 word, doesn't matter what. You press your stylus into the soft surface. Your word? Alive. You move beneath a bruised sky. Castellinum fades behind you in the dark, like a dream you weren't finished having. The road ahead is slick with mist, and the air carries that sharp metallic edge that says another storm is gathering. You keep your head down beneath the hood of your borrowed cloak, arms close, ears wide. Every chirp, every crack of twig sounds like a trumpet. It isn't long before you reach the edge of a burned village. The smell hits first, ash, soaked cloth, something faintly sour beneath it. The buildings are half collapsed, doors swinging in the wind, black scorch marks crawling up walls like ivy. You pass an abandoned plough still stuck in a furrow. Like the farmer let go mid-row and vanished. A doll lies in the mud, face down. You don't touch it. This wasn't plague, Marcus mutters. This was punishment. You glance at him. He doesn't elaborate. As you move quietly through the ruins, you spot the stranger. A figure crouched behind a collapsed stone wall watching. Not armed, not armoured, just still. Tiro stops beside you. See him? You nod. Marcus approaches cautiously. Who are you? He calls out. The man stands slowly. He's middle-aged, soaked to the bone, wearing what might have once been a merchant's tunic. He doesn't raise his hands, doesn't run. I've been waiting, he says simply. Marcus frowns. Waiting for what? The man smiles. For you. That stops everything. The man reaches into his satchel and pulls out a sealed scroll. The wax bears the faint impression of a fish. He extends it to you. Nova. Your name. You don't move, Tiro whispers. It could be a trap. Marcus gently takes the scroll and breaks the seal. He reads it silently. Then again, slower. Then he hands it to you. The words are written in a hand that feels familiar, though you've never seen it before. If you're reading this, then you lived. And if you lived, then I was right to believe you could. There is a way forward. Not to freedom. Not yet. But to power. In Arpinum there is a man who collects dangerous minds. He calls them tutors, philosophers, engineers, but many of them began as slaves. He'll test you. With questions, with choices, pass and you will no longer be hunted. You will be useful. Fail, and he will forget your name. Be ready. This isn't salvation, it's survival sharpened. You may not remember me, but I remembered you. M. Tiro leans over your shoulder. Who's M? You shake your head. You don't know? A former slave? A scholar? One of the quiet ones who watched you in the domus and never spoke? Maybe the Greek tutor, Rurik suggests. The one who disappeared. Historians still argue whether networks of escaped slaves communicated across cities, using traders and messengers to pass hidden notes, instructions, even recruitment offers. Marcus speaks it aloud like a thought, not a fact. But if this is real, the man who delivered the scroll shrugs. I was told to give that to someone who looked like they'd already lost everything and still stood up straight. You're not sure whether that's an insult or the highest praise. Do you know the man in Arpinum? Marcus asks. The courier smiles faintly. Number I just carry words. And just like that, he walks away, vanishing into the fog like a ghost with good posture. Rurik finally says, So, trap, Tiro. Definitely. You. Still going? Marcus nods. We're not survivors anymore. We're messengers now. You travel for 2 more days in silence, avoiding the main roads, skirting patrols, trading labour for bread. In one village, you help an old man repair a wall, and he lets you sleep in his goat shed. In another, a child tries to sell you a pebble for a denarius. You almost buy it. At night, you study the scroll again. The handwriting, the rhythm, the way the word useful is underlined. Whoever wrote it knew the world you came from, and maybe saw the world you could enter. You begin to imagine what it would mean to be useful again, not as a tool, as a person, a tutor, a thinker, a rebel with a lesson plan. On the evening of the 3rd day, you reach the edge of a narrow town built into a hillside. Stone houses, Thin alleys, Arpinum. Marcus exhales. Home of Cicero, he mutters. Tiro grins. We going to become senators? No, you reply, something better. And then you see the alleyway. A flickering lamp above a wooden door. Painted next to it, barely visible. A fish. You step forward. No guards, no bells. Just a knocker, shaped like an owl. You raise your hand to knock, and hesitate, because whatever is behind this door, tutor, trap, or test, you're walking into it by choice. For the first time, you knock. 3 slow taps. The owl-shaped knocker wobbles with each one, its bronze eyes staring down like it's judging your grammar before you've spoken a word. There's a pause, long enough that you start to wonder if this is just another story without a middle. But then the door creaks open, just a little. A face peers out. An older woman, sharp eyes, thin lips, grey streaks in tightly braided hair. She looks at each of you, Tiro, Rurik, Marcus, then finally you. This one, she says, pointing at you. Nova? You nod. Good. The others wait in the lower atrium. You follow me. She opens the door fully, revealing a long, torch-lit corridor that smells of oil and old ink. It's quiet. Not like the domus in Rome or the buzz of the vineyard. This quiet is thick, heavy. The air feels like it expects something from you. You glance back once. Tiro gives you a thumbs up. Rurik nods. Marcus says nothing, but his gaze is steady. You step inside. She leads you down 2 flights of narrow stairs and into a chamber that could have been mistaken for a scholar's dream or a hoarder's cave. Scrolls piled like haystacks, shelves groaning under the weight of tablets, wax slates, cracked busts of philosophers. A statue of Athena in the corner watches like she's not impressed. At the centre of the room sits a man at a writing desk, slender, bald, with papyrus-stained fingertips and eyes that have clearly not blinked in several hours. He looks up. So, he says, you're the ghost from Rome. You swallow. Yes. You escaped, he continues, unrolling a scroll without looking at it. Survived a market, a household, a monkey, a flood, a plague, and a failed patrol sweep. That's uncomfortably specific. How do you know all that, you ask? People talk, scrolls travel, secrets sell. He finally looks you full in the face. And I listen. Who are you? He smiles. A collector. Of what? He leans back. Of people with dangerous minds. The room seems smaller suddenly. The torches flicker. Or maybe you're just dizzy. Why me, you ask? Because you're still asking questions. He stands slowly, like unfolding a letter, and circles the room. I've taken in runaway gladiators who couldn't spell their names, scholars who couldn't lift a spoon. You, Nova, are something rare. You've watched. You've remembered. You survived without being swallowed. He stops in front of you. But survival isn't enough. I need thinkers, rebels, teachers who know the world they teach about. And that means I need to know you. All of you. He points to a long bench. Sit. You sit. He places a wax tablet in front of you, then a stylus. Write something. You hesitate. Like what? Doesn't matter. A thought, a memory, an insult, anything you believe in. You stare at the blank wax. Your hand moves. You write, no one is born to be owned. He reads it, nods. Not original, but not wrong. Then he asks questions. What is power? What is freedom? Is truth always useful? Can cruelty ever be just? The questions come faster. Philosophical, political, moral. You try to answer. Sometimes you stumble. Sometimes you find yourself talking like you've always known the answers, but hadn't heard yourself say them until now. Finally, he leans back. You're not ready, he says. Your stomach sinks. But you could be. You look up. He gestures to the tablet. You see the difference between the world, as it is, and the world as it lies to you. That's the first step. He walks back to the desk and takes out a scroll. This is for the others. He hands it to you. Instructions, a route, a safe house. You stand, still unsure. He adds, if you want to stay and learn, there's a cost. What kind of cost? Time, discipline, and the understanding that your life will never be simple again. You exhale. Was it ever? He smiles. You return to the upper hall, where Tiro is trying to balance an ink pot on Rurik's head. Marcus sits near a cold brazier, unreadable. Well? Tiro asks. He's intense, you reply. Marcus nods. That's good. You pass him the scroll. We move at night, he says. East. Tiro groans. More walking? Rurik grunts. Better than Rome. Most things are, you say. Later. As the moon rises over Arpinum, you lie on a blanket under the stars, the sounds of the house quiet behind you. No chains, no orders, just a slow, steady wind rustling the trees. You think of the scroll. You think of the man downstairs with eyes like coals and hands like ink. You think of the question he asked, what is power? You don't know yet, but you're getting closer. You leave Arpinum under a moon swollen like a promise. The road ahead is rough and narrow, carving through low hills, where olive trees cling to rocky soil like old soldiers. The scroll Marcus received lists a network of paths, old trade routes, forgotten smugglers' roads, temple ruins converted into rest stops. Your destination, a border town with a neutral name and very few questions. It's not freedom, it's a waypoint, and if everything goes wrong, it's an exit. Marcus walks ahead, map in hand, lips moving silently as he counts paces and markers. Tiro hums under his breath, plucking at a length of straw. He insists is a musical instrument. Rurik says little, though he stops once to rescue a turtle that's wandered into the path. You say nothing, because every part of you is tuned for danger. By midday, you reach a crossroad where the path dips into a dry stream bed. Tiro frowns. Didn't the scroll say we follow the aqueduct? It collapsed, Marcus replies. 2 years ago. We follow the runoff trail now. You descend carefully. The path is slick, still damp from the previous storm. The only sound is your feet squelching through clay and the distant call of a bird that might be laughing at you. Then the ground gives out, not dramatically, not all at once, just a soft crumble beneath your left foot. You tumble forward, slide 5 feet on your side, and land in what is either a large rut or the worst-smelling puddle in Latium. Nova? Tiro peers down at you. Are you dead? Emotionally, you groan. He offers a hand. You take it. But as he pulls you up, something catches your eye, half buried in the mud. A grate, old rusted, barely visible beneath roots and leaves. You crouch and wipe away the muck. It's iron, Roman design, probably part of a drainage system for a villa long gone. But it's more than that. There's airflow and sound. A faint trickle of water, maybe movement. You look at Marcus. He's already beside you. We follow it. Why? Because roads get searched, he says. Sewers don't. You pry open the grate with a stick and slide inside one by one. It's not as bad as you feared. Smells a little like vinegar and regret, but the air moves and the walls are wide enough to walk hunched. Fact drop. The Cloaca Maxima wasn't the only underground system in Rome. Across the empire, large estates often built miniature versions to drain water and waste. Some were abandoned for centuries, becoming hideaways for bandits, refugees, and, occasionally, philosophers with poor hygiene. Your feet splash through ankle-deep runoff. The walls glisten with moss. It's dark but not blind. Roots snake overhead, and strange graffiti lines the bricks. Crude drawings, tally marks, even a scratched inscription that reads, "Better to walk beneath Rome than serve above it." You whisper it aloud. Marcus nods. "Someone with a spine wrote that," Tiro's voice echoes. Softly behind you. "You think we're the only ones down here?" Rurik answers. "No." And he's right. It starts with a sound, a cough, then the skitter of feet. Someone moves up ahead. Not fast, limping maybe, not a threat, yet. You raise your hand, and everyone stops. The figure stumbles into view, a boy maybe 13, draped in a torn tunic too big for his frame. His face is streaked with soot, and his eyes widen when he sees you. He doesn't run. Marcus crouches. "We're not soldiers." The boy says nothing, then slowly reaches behind him and drags out a wooden bowl. In it, mushrooms, wet, dirty, but carefully collected. "He's foraging," Tiro whispers. "This is his home." You offer him a scrap of dried bread. He takes it. No smile, just a sharp nod. Then he points left, down another tunnel, a longer one. We follow him. The path narrows. The air turns cooler, and then, just as your legs begin to tremble from the crouching, it opens. A chamber, carved out of old stone. It was likely a cistern once. Now it's a refuge. Blankets line the walls. A clay stove burns weakly in the corner. 3 more figures sit there, a blind woman, a limping man, and a girl younger than Livia, sleeping with a doll made from a rag. No one speaks, but no one draws weapons either. The boy gestures for you to sit. And you do. It's strange how quickly you settle. You've run from slave markets, guards, storms, rivers, and plague. But now, in this dripping hole in the earth, you feel something not quite like safety, but not quite like danger either. The boy points to a wall of carved lines. Tally marks again. Hundreds of them. Marcus counts under his breath. How long he's lived here. Alone? Not anymore. You sleep in shifts. Tiro watches the left passage. Rurik sleeps sitting up. Marcus trades mushrooms for information. You learn these people were cast out. Not escaped, just discarded. Too sick, too poor, too invisible to matter. You ask the woman her name. She says, "Lana." You ask what they need. She says, "To not be found." You stay one night. When you leave the next morning, the boy walks with you to the edge of the sewer's end. It opens near a grove of cypress trees, just outside a roadside temple. He doesn't say goodbye. You don't either. But as you climb into daylight, Marcus says, "Not all heroes wear armour." And you realise he's right. Sometimes they wear rags and mushrooms. The road hums beneath your feet like a plucked string. It's morning now, clear for once. The sun casts golden stripes through the cypress grove, lighting up the world like it's daring you to believe in it again. You squint toward the east, where hills roll away like worn cushions, the road unfurling between them. You're almost there. The scroll from Arpinum had been clear. Meet the contact in the fishing village of Ameriola near the Tiber Bend. Someone there, someone trustworthy, would help you cross the river and vanish for good. Not just disappear, but become unfindable. Tiro walks beside you, carrying a bundle of firewood on his shoulder and whistling a tune that probably didn't exist before he made it up. Rurik is ahead, scanning the path like a hawk in human form. Marcus limps slightly now, his legs stiff from days of walking, but he doesn't complain. And you? You carry nothing but the scroll and a single thought that's louder than anything else. What now? You're not sure how long that question has lived in your ribs, but you feel it, thudding, louder with every step toward the village. The road curves downhill, and you spot it. A Meriola. It's small, maybe a dozen clay-tiled roofs, smoke rising from just 2. Boats bob along the riverbank, tied loosely, like they know no one's in the mood to steal anything. You see goats, chickens, a child throwing a stick at another child, with absolutely no coordination. It's quiet. Too quiet. Marcus says it before you do. Something's off. Rurik grips his walking staff tighter. You move into the village slowly. No greetings, no curious stares. The few faces you glimpse vanish quickly behind shutters. The baker's stall is abandoned, loaves blackened in the hearth. A bowl of figs sits on a stoop, untouched. Tiro nudges it. Maybe they're hiding from soldiers, he whispers, and then you see the symbol, carved into the side of a building. A snake biting its own tail. Ouroboros, but not decorative, not artistic. Cut deep, messy, hurried. Below it, scrawled letters, eyes everywhere. You all freeze. Marcus steps forward. Back, now. But it's too late. A shout from behind. Steel glinting, boots stomping gravel. You spin. 3 men, not soldiers, mercenaries by the look of them. Light armour, patchy beards, swords drawn. Nova, one yells. We just want a word. Yeah, right. Tiro's eyes go wide. Run? You don't need to answer. The 4 of you bolt, down the hill, past the fig stand, through the alley, between 2 crumbling villas. You duck under laundry lines, crash through a chicken pen, and curse every cobblestone that wasn't cemented properly. You make for the river. It stretches before you like salvation. Muddy, wide, lined with reeds, whispering frantic encouragement. There's a dock, a boat, empty, worn but afloat. Rurik gets there first, yanks off the rope. You jump in, and that's when the arrow flies. It zips past your head, embedding in the side of the boat with a thunk that you feel in your teeth. Another follows, then a third. Row! Marcus barks, but the current is sluggish, the oars are splintered, and behind you, the mercenaries are charging the dock. And then, a voice from the opposite shore. Down! You don't hesitate. You duck just in time to hear the twang of a crossbow. One of the mercenaries cries out, crashes onto the dock. Another arrow follows, clean, sharp, professional. The other 2 scatter like startled rats. You blink, peer across the water. A figure stands on the far bank, cloaked, hooded, holding a crossbow like it's part of their body. They motion to the bank just downstream, where a second smaller boat is tied. Row there, Marcus orders. Rurik grabs the oars. You lurch forward, scraping along the dock, your hearts in your throats. The current picks up. You glide toward the figure, ducking another arrow. This one fired too late from the hills behind. The mercenaries are retreating, maybe regrouping, maybe not willing to risk a fight with someone who actually knows how to aim. You reach the far bank. The cloaked figure pulls the boat in and speaks for the first time. You're late, Marcus exhales. We've had a long month. The figure removes their hood. It's a woman, older, weathered, with scars like old rivers across her cheek, and an expression that suggests she's made peace with every mistake she's ever survived. I'm Lycia, she says. I work with M. You nod slowly. You don't ask how she knew you. She knew. She tosses you each a dry cloak, a satchel, and a boiled egg. Eat fast, we move in 5. Where? Tiro asks. Lycia doesn't answer. She just nods toward the hills, and suddenly you understand. This isn't the end of the road. It's another bend in the river. Historians still argue whether networks like this were organised rebellions or just scattered efforts to keep people alive. Whether their maps were real or their names were code. But standing here, barefoot and shaking and alive, you know one thing. Someone out there wanted you free, even if they'd never meet you. You follow Lycia up the trail. The sun is behind you, the mercenaries are behind you. But ahead, trees, fog, and 1,000 places to vanish. You don't know what happens next, but for the first time, it's your story to write. You walk into the mist, like someone who finally knows they exist. The forest beyond Ameriola isn't marked on any scroll. There are no milestones here, no Roman roads, no merchants or governors, just trees, tall and silent. Their leaves whisper overhead, like the ancestors trying not to wake the gods. You follow Lycia's lead through twisting paths made more by habit than design. Occasionally, she mutters warnings, that stump houses hornets, or step to the right here unless you enjoy sudden mud baths. Her crossbow never leaves her back. Her eyes never stop moving. Behind you, Rurik lumbers quietly. Tiro has gone from joking to reverent silence, like he's just realised the trees are sacred and maybe listening. Marcus hums softly now and then, some old song that's more rhythm than melody. And you walk with something new in your chest. Not fear, not yet peace, something like ownership of yourself. You make camp that night beneath a shelf of mossy stone, hidden by brush and quiet. Lycia starts a fire with the efficiency of someone who has never failed to start a fire. You all eat from a shared pouch of nuts and dried fruit, passing it around like a chalice. Then as darkness settles and the embers warm your boots, Lycia looks at you and says, "You know what's next, right?" You shake your head, not ready to guess. "You've survived Rome," she says. "But survival's just the first page. What are you going to do with that?" The fire crackles. No one interrupts. She continues, "We don't rescue people to hide them. We rescue people to use them, to teach others how not to die, how to make the empire smaller than their will." "You sit with that," Tiro whispers. "Can we win, though?" "Sometimes," Lycia replies, "but that's not the point. The point is we make sure they don't win easily." That night, you don't sleep. Not from fear, from choice. You sit under a cypress tree and imagine the empire as a wall, tall, cracked and crumbling at the edges. And you? You're a single chisel mark, but enough of those can bring the whole thing down. You think about Livia, about Faustus, about Marina and her spoon, and Pulcher the monkey flinging grapes from the rafters, about the girl with the rag doll in the sewer, and the scholar in Arpinum who asked you to define power. Maybe this is it. Maybe power is simply the freedom to act with purpose. You don't have a toga, you don't have a title, but you have a name, and no one owns it anymore. The next morning, the mist lifts. It doesn't vanish, just drifts higher, softening the edges of the forest until the trees look like brushstrokes and the hills like memory. You stretch, muscles tight but willing. Rurik hands you a crust of bread without a word. Tiro is already carving something into a stick, probably a joke he hasn't figured out yet. You feel lighter, not because the journey is over, it isn't, but because you've stopped running from something. Now you're walking towards something. Lycia hands you a new scroll, sealed in wax. No name on it, just a mark you recognise, the fish. She nods. When you're ready, take it north. There's a school there, not the kind with tutors and punishments, the kind with purpose. They'll be expecting you. You take it. You don't know when you'll go, but you know you will. As the camp is packed and the embers are stamped out, you turn one last time to look at the forest. It blinks back slowly, alive, ancient, unbothered, and then you step forward, not quietly, not hidden, just you. And somewhere far away in a world that thinks it still owns you, a record book turns another page and finds nothing written there. You're gone, but not lost. You're free, and the Empire will never sleep quite as soundly again. Sweet dreams.